Hi everybody, I am live. I'm going live with Julie Michaelson. I'm just going to wait for her to join me, and I hope everyone's well and Happy New Year. This is my first live of the new year. I'm just going to wait for Julie to join us, and I look forward to this conversation so much. I can't wait to talk to Julie. So I'm just waiting for her to join me, and then we will get going. We have so much to cover. I have tons of questions for her. I'm really excited about this conversation. We had such a wonderful call on her podcast, an episode we recorded a couple months ago, I think. And I can't wait for you guys. If you haven't listened to the episode, it's one of the best I feel like I've done, and I was re-listening to it last night and feel really good about that episode because it's just so honest and tells you all about the MS stage and my story and my journey and how I came to the MS stage and how I founded it. And so let me see if I can get Julie on board here. Here we go. I just invited her. There she is.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Good. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so happy to have you here. It's like such an honor to have you. I know you're so busy and you squeezed this into your day. So it is a true pleasure. I'm so thrilled. So I just want to introduce you first. I have lots of notes and lots of questions. So you are, Julie Michaelson is a National Board Certified Functional Medicine Health Coach, Certified AIP, the creator of RA the Right Way. She is a heart-centered health coach and creator of the Inspired Living with Autoimmunity podcast, which is for high achievers who want to stay sharp, energetic, and focused. One of my favorite podcasts to listen to. It's so inspiring. I love all the stories you share, and the just people you have on are so awesome and so much
Aren't they?
Yes, so much incredible new information that we need as autoimmune warriors. So I'd love to start with your story. Can you tell us, you, like me, ignored the doctors after a while of listening to the doctors, and you decided there was another way. There had to be another way to heal yourself. So I'd love to learn more about your journey because we didn't cover that in our episode on your podcast.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I was a little slower to the uptake than you. I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis in my early 30s. I was a newly single mom with 3 kids under the age of 6, I believe. And was told, as so many, and I know when we had this conversation, got that same story, was told there's nothing we can do but give you these medications to slow your decline and manage your symptoms. We will keep you as comfortable, this is a direct quote, we'll keep you as comfortable as possible for as long as possible. And that's what I was told. I was told to expect decline and that I needed those medications. And I believed it, hook, line, and sinker. I did not. I wasn't in the medical world. And I guess even if I had been, it wouldn't have mattered. I probably would have, for a while, believed it anyway. Unfortunately, it's where we are now, right? So I did listen to the doctors for 11 years. At that 11-year mark, I was on 10 prescription medications, most of which were for side effects from the other medications, none of which were managing my symptoms.
Right.
None of which were slowing my disease process at all. And
they weren't curing you.
They weren't curing, or they weren't even helping me.
Curing me. Just kept fighting each other, probably.
I know. And it was at that point that they were trying to convince me to get a handicap placard for my car not because I couldn't walk, because I could still walk, but because, there was only just so much of me to go around in a day. And so they felt like, well, this is one thing we can do to make it a little better. And it was, I'll jump backwards. My father had passed away in his sleep at age 54. So fast forward to this point, now I'm in my 40s and thinking, I'm not going to see 50.
Yep.
And it was my daughter, who's my youngest, who came to me one night and shared her fear that she was going to lose me. And I promised her in that moment that I would try everything. And it was that moment where I realized I hadn't. Like, I thought I tried everything because I tried every medication they put me on. And I had over the years asked the doctor, well, what about gluten, which it ended up, we have similarities. I was already gluten-free at this point because my son had been diagnosed with celiac.
Okay.
And I went gluten-free to support him, which led us to realize that, oh, lo and behold, I too am celiac.
Okay.
But beyond that, everything I asked, they were like, nah, no, maybe 1 in a million. And so, but that was the best gift ever because I decided to try everything.
Yeah.
And that's why I have the podcast, and that's why we have these conversations, because I didn't know. I really didn't know there was another way, or I would have done it sooner.
Yeah.
And I always, my disclaimer, I'm not anti-medication. We need it sometimes. It serves a purpose. But you use the word cure. It's not a cure. And we need to figure out, sometimes while we're using the medication to slow things down and protect us. But we need to get to what is the cure? How do we manage this lifelong?
Yeah. What's the root of the whole problem?
Yeah.
And I mean, we've had that conversation too, because I'm on a medication now, on an MS medication.
And
it
you
is
should
slowing.
be right now.
I need it right now. And I'm not convinced that I need it forever, because I am doing other things and I am doing everything like you and I talked about. But, you never know. I mean, there's still possibilities, but back when you and I both were diagnosed, I mean, I was 2004, when were you?
The early 2000s.
Yeah, so right around the same time. But back then, that is all doctors knew. And
Actually, I think it was 2004.
Oh,
so right in there, 2003, 2004.
Okay, so and back then, functional medicine doctors, that wasn't really a thing.
I hadn't even heard of it.
No, I'd never heard of it back then. And gluten was just becoming sort of known, but people were like, that's quacky. What is, why are you getting off gluten? But it wasn't, it was only, and I mentioned this in the podcast, it was only because of living in LA that it was a little bit more, at that time I had moved to LA, so it was a little bit more accepted and not quite as weird. But yes. So
and I lived outside of Boulder, Colorado, so same thing. It was like a good place if you were going to be gluten-free back then.
People were more accepting. People had farms, right? Like people grew some people grew their own veggies back then, and now more do, I think.
Absolutely.
So then what led you, okay, so let's just talk about how you actually healed yourself, because I want to hear how that happened. And didn't you have 3 or 4 autoimmune diagnoses at that point?
I did. By then it was celiac, RA, Hashimoto's, fibromyalgia.
Yeah.
Which they weren't considering autoimmune back then, and now studies are showing it is. And even that diagnosis, I had the chronic migraine. I mean, just name something.
Yeah. Whatever it is.
I had an irritable bowel my whole life, back and forth. It was I don't know. And so I started with food when it was like, well, okay, now I promised I was going to do, what can I do? And I realized that when I had gone gluten-free, it moved the needle a little bit, which was more than the medications had done.
Yeah.
So I kind of circled back. I joke. I say at that moment in time, I thought I was paleo, but I was doing it wrong.
Oh.
I didn't realize corn was a grain. I had no guidance, right? I was just trying stuff.
Yeah.
I was still very low fat, Like I had grown up, again, dad died at 54, could be the heart, let's not eat fat.
No high cholesterol. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, and I had, familial high cholesterol, the whole thing. And so we bought into that fat is evil,
Right.
hook, line. I say, like, if I never see another boneless, skinless chicken breast in my life, I am okay. Like, I have eaten enough of them. So that's where I started, was tweaking diet, and just serendipitously, because the universe is kind, I literally was driving in the car and I heard Dave Asprey of then it was Bulletproof on the radio, and he was talking about his coffee and his book, and I bought his I think it was a newer book at the time, The Bulletproof Diet. And one of my biggest symptoms I had struggled with that whole time was brain fog, not uncommon. And so I read the book more than once, because the first time I read it, I certainly didn't absorb, but he did it wasn't just the diet, like he really gave me an understanding of the inflammatory nature of certain foods.
Yeah.
And the why to avoid. And I had never really been a dieter, so, but I did it. I tried it, and oh my gosh, I was feeling so much better. And so all of a sudden the brain fog started to lift, and I started to kind of go in the rabbit hole, hence the podcast, right? I was listening to his podcast, and much like you, I found meditation.
Yeah.
What? That improved my autoimmune symptoms. I started meditating, and within a month, I would say, I was sleeping better, my pain was better, and for the first time in over a decade, I woke up in the morning with energy. Like, I didn't think that would ever be a thing, and so it was like, wow, there's something to this.
Yeah.
And again, then I just started to dig deeper and deeper. I'm really blessed, and I have no doubt this is what I'm supposed to be doing, because knowing what I know now and looking back, the fact that I was able to improve to the level I did just with those two things, diet and stress management, was remarkable, because I have incredible multiple toxicity issues. And so for some people, they may do the meditating and the diet and have blood work like mine and still not feel any better. But for me, it's just been every area I have up-leveled and addressed has just continued to improve things. I joke, I'm like, okay, now I'm 50. So I did make it to 50. I'm 50. I'm turning 54 this year. And I started scuba diving last year. So, life is getting bigger and bigger instead of smaller and smaller, which is how it should be.
Yes.
It really is.
Yeah, you're so right. I love that. I love that term. I love that. It is, you're right. Life should be that way as we get older.
Yeah, we don't have to accept, and autoimmune or not, I think this mindset we've been fed is decline as you age.
Yeah.
And, as we address the things to improve our autoimmune health, our immune health, oh my gosh, well, we're also kind of reverse aging at the same time. So it's lots of fun.
Right. No, that's true. I mean, I looked at the mirror this morning. I was like, wait, do I have crow's feet? Have those started happening? And it was funny, but then because
then the next answer is, have I been smiling a lot?
Well, that was the thing. I was smiling in the mirror at myself intentionally to uplift my the cells in my body, and I was like, girl, I'm smiling, and I have crow's feet. But then I was like, but you know what? I look a lot. I mean, this is not me trying to toot my own horn or sound vain.
You look 12. Come on.
I look a lot younger than most of my friends. But I don't, do all the things. I don't do the bad things. I do the good things.
Right.
So, I mean, it shows, right? Like, it just, we
absolutely
age better if we really do take care of ourselves for that long. And I'm a huge believer in that. Okay, so that was your journey. And then, so wait, let's talk about, what did you do before for work, before you started this journey? Because then you started a whole new path for your work, right?
Yes. Well, so I was unable to work for several years.
Right.
I was the person who was resting while my kids were at school. You know, I would do the morning and then I would rest, and then I would do that after school to bedtime, which was rough.
Right.
And so I had stopped working at the kind of the height of my brain fog. I was in the middle of my passion has always been, shocker, helping people. And I was working on a certification for equine assisted psychotherapy when not only was the brain fog, rough to be studying, but that was when I really was limited in my physical abilities and would have flares that would just take me down.
Yeah.
And my dream at the time was to work with veterans. And I thought, well, I can't be a therapist and be like, sorry, I'm not coming to work today
Right.
because I don't feel well.
Yeah.
And so I just put that aside and focused all my energy on the kids and being the mom I wanted to be, and still couldn't because I didn't have enough energy. But and so it was through my own health journey that it was like, people need to know, right? Again, that's why we're here. I want people to know that we can heal. The body's designed to heal. And no matter what you're told you have, there's a reason. There's something, it's not just usually one thing. I used to be like, what's the root cause? And I'm like, oh, it's the blend. It's never just one thing.
Never,
But the more, and it was through actually the Dave Asprey and Bulletproof, as I got better and my brain fog lifted and I got passionate about learning and what else can I improve, he opened a coaching program. And I was like, I'm in. And so it was through his coaching program that then I found functional medicine. And so see, the rabbit hole just gets deeper and deeper. And it's just been, I can't possibly learn enough. And the fun is that as I go, there's just so many advancements in the field that it's just, endless. Abilities are endless.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
In fact, I taught a new group of students on Monday, and I literally said just that, because they were able to feel hope, which was really, and they did in the class, in the course of the 2 hours, they started feeling a little hopeless and they ended feeling hopeful. So it is true. The possibilities are endless. You just have to be open to them and not play the victim role, right? We talked about that in our episode together too.
Yes.
So what kind of meditation do you love or do? Because, and what was the kind that healed you, that helped you heal? Because it sounds like it helped your sleep, it helped everything. Was it morning? Was it night? Was it both? What was there a specific kind? I'm curious.
It was, so at the time, I had listened to one of Dave's podcasts, and he was interviewing Emily Fletcher, who runs Ziva Meditation.
Yeah, okay.
And she had an online program. It's Vedic meditation, so it's mantra-based. This program that I did, it was 20 minutes twice a day. And for me, this is the important part about meditation. I had played with meditation in the past and thought I was a terrible meditator.
Yeah, me too.
Because, and I think we might have chatted about this, because I couldn't keep my mind blank, and I thought that was what successful meditation was. And it was listening to this interview with Emily where she was like, we've got it all wrong, and that's not how the brain works, and the gold is in returning to the meditation. And even she says, doesn't matter if it's guided meditation, Vedic meditation, whatever resonates with you, it's the returning, it's the exercising that muscle. And so for me, it was 20 minutes twice a day, just get in the chair. And I do all different kinds of meditation now, depending on how I'm feeling and what I feel like I need or will serve the best. But it's the consistency. And
Yeah.
I don't tell anybody. I did jump in at 20 minutes twice a day. I don't do that with my clients.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a big commitment.
Yeah. Now I say, like, let's start with 5 minutes a day.
Yeah.
And the morning or night, it depends. If it's somebody with sleep issues, we may focus on night.
Yeah.
I love morning because I think it sets you up for your day to be your best self.
Yeah, me too.
So yeah, the only wrong way to meditate is not to meditate.
Right.
Like doesn't matter what kind, it doesn't matter how long, walking meditation, like you name it, there's a way to meditate.
Yes, you're right. To calm your mind, to calm your nervous system. Yeah. I meditate in the morning, but now that you've said that, I've had practices where I've meditated at night as well. And it really helps. I mean, you've inspired me because I think now I might try doing a few minutes at night as well, because it helps you like really sleep well. Like I've experienced that before, and I don't know why I don't do it, but it is.
Because we're human.
Right.
That's why we're here today. Okay, we're done. We'll get you meditating at night.
We're human. I know, right? You just inspired me. I'm going to do it. So, okay. My next question is, we both believe, we've talked about this in the podcast episode, and both talk about getting out of our heads and into our hearts. Yes. So I want to hear more about your heart-centered health coaching. Like that, you were certified in that, or that was something you focused on? Or
it was the basis of the initial coaching program I did through what was then the Bulletproof Training Institute. It's not any longer, but you know, we spend all our time in our head. And you know this because this goes to what you're doing with the women that you're helping with naming your symptom and getting to know your symptoms, their characteristics, what they're telling you. A lot of times we end up with an autoimmune diagnosis because we weren't listening to our body. Yeah, our symptoms, our information, and none of us, we may feel like we woke up one day with an autoimmune disorder. That's not how it happened. And so, you know, we can't outthink our illness. We need to start feeling, and my training and my belief is, you know, the answers are in our heart. And so I don't coach. I coach. I'm not a consultant. I don't tell people what to do. Yes, I give information. But the coaching piece is we partner. And I really do believe we all have our answers. We just need to be able to tap into them. Yeah. And that comes from the heart. Yes. And often, I'm sure you see this as well. I just did this with a client yesterday, and you know, if you're someone who hasn't spent time dropping into your heart and you're not comfortable with that, just know that's a defense mechanism. That's a reflex. And that just means you need to do that work.
Yes. And you need to listen more to your body. You need to get to know your body better, because because like the gut is like, I feel like sometimes some people just are like, oh yeah, my gut instinct is telling me blah, blah, blah. Well, that's really your gut's connected to your heart, but maybe you feel it through your gut and not through your heart. Or maybe you haven't fully associated that essentially yet. But yeah, I'm such a huge believer in that, and I teach that too. And I don't tell people what to do. We talked about this. Like things just happen because through the program, they just open up to a whole world of possibility. And then suddenly things start to unfold and things start to happen, and they start to recognize new things that they didn't even know were there or were possible or that they could do, or maybe they didn't know they could do this certain thing anymore. And then they actually get invited to go do it. And then they're like, wow, really? I haven't done this since college. And it's so enjoyable. So it's just, the possibilities being totally endless. And I'm such a believer in listening to your heart, because so many people lead with their head, right? Everybody does. We all do. So if you're not consciously practicing, you know, getting into your heart space and connecting,
then I promise you're not connecting,
Right.
and again, I say like the more aggressive that knee-jerk reaction when you kind of like touch into that space and it's really uncomfortable, it's a signal that that's where your work, that's where your next phase of work is.
Yeah.
Is, opening that heart. And we do, that's a protection mechanism. We do that.
Yeah.
We tend to, we don't, not consciously, but over time we tend to close off, especially with chronic illness, right? If we're pushing through our day in pain, or we're limited and life is smaller, all the things tend to encourage the closing off, and we need to open it back up so that we can heal.
Yeah, and I'm a huge believer because I see it happen. I mean, every woman I've coached, there's always, the MS was there. Like it was under there, it was happening, and then they have some big life event. Same thing happened with me. Some big life event that sends it over the edge. It's like the straw that broke the camel's back. The illness was already percolating, and then it's the traumatic event, whatever that is, whether a family member has passed away. I was in 9/11. I was there on 9/11. Like whatever it was that happened, that then sets it over the edge to then be like, okay, that's the volcano that exploded, and that's the real warning sign, something's really wrong here, and you've been ignoring it, and you didn't know it was there, or maybe you did, you kind of thought maybe something was wrong, but you didn't really, and you didn't do anything about it, and now it's like, okay, you have no choice but to like pay attention to this. It's the body's way of saying, pay attention to me.
Hello. Well, it'll get louder and louder and louder.
Right.
One thing too is most of us only have the conscious experience of what is it like to be in this body. And so a lot of the things that we're ignoring, not even consciously, I don't know what it feels like to be in your body, or, does everybody feel these things? Is everybody dealing with these things? And especially, I was younger, you were younger. For people that get onset, in their 40s and 50s, well, then they're just told they're getting older.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, I should have aches and pains. I'm older.
Right.
It should be hard to get up in the morning. I'm getting old. No.
Yeah.
But, because we don't have anything to compare it to, and we're not sitting down over a cup of tea discussing, like, do you have anything in your body hurting, or, like, how much are you ignoring to get through your day,
Right. We should be having that conversation with our bodies. Like, why is it hurting? Why are you hurting today?
Well, with our body, but I'm saying, we're not talking to other, well, you and I are now.
Right.
No,
but you're right. None of your
we don't know.
Yeah. I mean, people who are doing the work are having these conversations. Like,
and then back to the head, right? Like, we can explain away. My first really clear RA symptom was foot pain. But I had, recently moved to Colorado, and I was hiking a lot. And so what did I do? I got, new shoes. And when that didn't work, well, I was living near Boulder, so I went and got orthotics made for my new shoes, and it wasn't until, for me, again, something's really wrong.
Yeah.
For me, was my middle son woke up in the middle of the night with a sore throat, and you've probably already gotten the gist that, like, for me, motherhood is like it, right?
Yeah, of course.
So I was a very hands-on mom.
Yeah.
And he came in the middle of the night, and his throat was hurting. And this is not a high maintenance child. He came in, Mom, my throat hurts. I couldn't get up. I was so fatigued.
Wow.
That I could not get myself out of bed to take care of my child.
Wow.
And I sent him to, and somebody listening might be like, oh, that's not a big deal. Like, I said, go get a glass of water and come back. And so it's not like I didn't ignore him, or, he was fine. He didn't really notice. I noticed. And that it was that instance then combined with, like, oh, and my feet hurt. Oh, my hands hurt. And I was fortunate enough to have a very good friend who was a doctor who has RA. And I was telling her the story over, then she starts examining me and sent and gave me who to go see to get diagnosed. But, that's what it takes, right? It takes
Yeah.
something we can't ignore.
Right.
Like with you, like
Yeah.
you just, it
No.
will be, and maybe somebody else would have ignored that, but that was so out of character for me that was enough, that I was like, this is not my hiking shoes. Like something's
and
really
your
wrong.
body well enough at that point, like we knew our bodies enough to be like, this is not normal. Something is really wrong.
Yeah.
And most people have that moment when this
We do.
happens. But RA, I would think, is pretty hard to diagnose. I mean, MS is hard to diagnose, but RA,
They
I would
both
think it's
can go
hard.
Yeah, I joke. I mean, I used to say, oh, I was so lucky. I got diagnosed really rather quickly. I went, and I'm seronegative, and so I'm somebody who could have gone 8-9 years without a diagnosis.
Right.
But for that friend who sent me to her rheumatologist, who happened to be at a center who at the time they had a small bone MRI machine. And so it was through that I was able to, which is, I don't even know anybody else who's had a small bone MRI done. But it
I've
was,
never heard of that.
yeah, it was because they did that they were able to see, the clear RA changes in my synovial fluid at the time. And
Wow.
I got the diagnosis. Now, back then I thought I was so lucky. Now I'm
Right.
like, oh, I could have avoided maybe like 8 years of medications I didn't need. But
Well,
it's okay. It's all good.
They love me, right?
Exactly.
Like,
Exactly.
You wouldn't be doing your great work if you
I
had
would
gone
not
through
be
all of
here.
that.
And I tell people all the time, like if my medications had been working, you
Right.
would not know my name. I would be
Right.
taking them and who knows what I'd be doing.
Yeah.
And there's
You wouldn't
nothing
have
I would rather do, which is why I started the podcast, because that was such a big part of my healing journey. And I'm like, we can live in our circles and think everybody knows the things we know, and and then you go and see the line around the corner at McDonald's and you realize like we live in a bubble.
Yeah.
And I just want to expand the bubble so that somebody looking can hear these conversations.
Yes. Yes. I totally agree. Well, can we talk about your horse love?
Sure.
Because I'm like so excited about this. I love horses. Not that I ride them like you do, obviously, but I want to know more about how that all came about and what is, yes, please, because they're such magical creatures.
They are magical creatures, and there's some fun science with horses as well. So I grew up in New Jersey as a competitive equestrian, so it's been a lifelong love of mine. I stopped riding like so many, kind of end of high school, went to college, did my thing. When we moved here and my daughter was 3, she said, can I take riding lessons? And so, being an equestrian, I didn't just take her to the first barn I found. I started to research, and I found the top show barn, and the girls there said, oh, but we all started with this person. And I made it literally through 3 lessons. And at her 3rd lesson, I said to the trainer, I still have my saddle. Do you think I could ride sometime? And then that was it. It was just all over again. And this was toward the height of, or it definitely, that was closer to the beginning of my decline.
Okay.
And so there were times when, riding again became, then a horse, and then she got a pony, and she is a competitive equestrian way better than I ever was.
Wow.
And we're the crazy horse people. I mean, her last 2 years of high school here in Colorado, she was competing out of Texas nationally with a trainer there. So,
Wow.
It's a little, it can be its own illness.
Well, no.
But it's good. It's healthy.
It's healthy, but it's time consuming.
It's time consuming. It's
Yeah.
expensive.
Yes.
But there were days, here's my fun equine science nugget.
Okay.
There were days, and I actually first saw these studies when I was studying the equine assisted therapy. But there were days where I really didn't feel well. I couldn't do anything. There was no way I could ride. But out of, kind of guilt or obligation, I would just go see my horse. And without fail, every time, I'll just run a brush over her, which was like laborious when I was in a lot of pain.
Yeah.
And as I was with her, the pain would get better and I would feel better. And I always just thought it was like a psychological thing or because I love her. But the energy field of the horse has an anti-inflammatory response on the human.
Wow.
And so being in her energy bubble really, and yes, it shifted my mindset and brought me joy, but also, I joke, I'm like, she's like a 1,200-pound NSAID, but you don't have to swallow and destroy your gut.
She's like going to a hyperbaric oxygen chamber.
Totally.
Like pure oxygen.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I believe it.
Yeah. So back then, my horses, then I had one horse. She was boarded. My whole life, growing up kind of in the show world, the horses were always boarded. And just part of my healing journey, 5 years ago, I built the farm where I am now. My horses live at home. I take care of them. I learned 2 weeks ago, not that this was on a bucket list, but I can now fix copper pipe because we had a really good freeze here.
Yeah. Right.
But that's part of the life getting bigger thing, right? Like there's no way I could have physically taken care of them at home back then.
Right.
But now it's like, well, what else can I do? When I saw that we had a pipe break and I knew, me and everybody else around here, like it's going to be ages before I could get a plumber. I wonder if I could fix that. Like that's
badass is what that is, Julie.
It's I'm proud.
I would have even thought, if that happened, I wouldn't be the one being like, I wonder if I can do that on my own. I don't think my brain would have gone there. So I am like really, really impressed.
Well, the best is I called my son who's in construction and said, I hate to always do this, but when you come for dinner on Monday, do you think maybe you could bring some welding stuff and help fix the pipes? And he was like, that is so different from the kind of welding I do. Like, I can try, but I don't think so. And so by the time he got here, I had already fixed it. So it was good.
You're like, that's amazing.
But this is what happens, right? As we start to expand.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, why can't I fix a copper pipe?
Right.
Of course I can.
Yeah.
It was not underground, to be fair.
What?
It wasn't underground or anything, to be fair. Like, I'm not that badass.
Yeah. You're still pretty badass. No, my husband and I came out to Telluride I think I told you that, in August. We've spent a week out there. And I wanted to go riding. I hadn't ridden in forever. And not that I was ever like a rider. I wouldn't call myself that. But I just hadn't been in a really long time. And I was like, I just feel like it'll be really good for me. And I was trying to focus on what, we plan our trips now. It's like, let me focus on what I can do that's going to be fun and not what I can't.
Oh, love that.
Because it's really, you got to focus on the positive. It's like, go on this vacation and plan. And like, we literally planned adventures knowing that I would be able to do them versus being like, well, darn it, I can't do that, and let him do it without me. So we went riding on a tour, which was really fun, but we stopped. And it was a long time, right? I mean, it was 4 hours or something.
Oh, wow.
It was I think it was like 3 to 4 hours, but we stopped for lunch and I had to get off the horse, and I literally got off the horse and I was like, my legs were just noodles. And I had a really hard time walking, and it was not even just like the normal person having a hard time walking because they were just sore. I was like, no, literally, I can barely walk.
Feel my legs.
Because my MS like the legs were just like not online. But the story of the moral of that is, after it was all said and done, we got back to the hotel and I rested and whatever, I actually felt amazing. I was like, I feel really good. The next day I did a yoga class and I felt great, and my legs were like way online and felt great. And And strong. And Telluride is hard. That altitude is tough.
It's you've got altitude, the terrain,
Yeah.
you know, and then being in this, honestly, I wouldn't do that to I would not get in the saddle for 4 hours
Yeah.
after not riding for a period of time.
Yeah.
But also think about, you know, have you heard of hippotherapy?
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yeah.
it makes sense, you know, even though you really had a hard time when you first got off, but neurologically, that walk on the horse is doing really good things. And
Yeah,
so
like
that makes sense to me.
realigning
Yeah.
the legs. Like that's kind of
Yeah.
what, like when I got off, I was like, whoa, like I had to sit down. I literally could barely walk. I was like holding on to things. And then we had to get back on to get back to the
I was
cars.
waiting for that part.
So then we got back on and I was like, okay, I can do this. But it was like, I'm also small. And so I'm like, the saddle's rubbing me in weird places
Right.
on so I'm like, oh, I gotta stuff my fleece up under my ass because my sits bones are like, I was like, oh, this is really uncomfortable. But I made it through and then I felt really good. Like the next day I was like, this is good.
See, you're a badass because that's like any horse person would be like, no, that sounds terrible. Like, I joke now, like my saddle, you know, I still ride English. And so for me, like most people, even my daughter, when she started at 3, they said, well, a lot of kids start Western, you know, because there's more saddle, and she was not having any of it. Nope, I'm not going to do it. And so we're like those people. I have a hard time in a Western saddle because there's just so much saddle.
Yeah, it's a lot
I'm
of
used
saddle.
to some contact with the horse. So even my fancy little jumping saddle now these days, not my old one, but you know, has like a gel seat under the leather.
Nice.
So, oh yeah, you did not get that on your trail ride. I promise.
I did not get that. I definitely did not get that.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your practice now.
Yeah.
Who do you coach? How does it work, I guess? And what are your favorite modalities? Like what do you coach? Like how does it work? Yeah.
It's a small question. No.
I know. Well,
so I have a framework. Everybody that I coach, and I have. So Julie Michaelson coaching is focused on autoimmunity.
Yeah.
But I also work in partnership with a clinic locally. And so I coach all kinds of people. And so, you know, sometimes they're referring autoimmune, but sometimes they're referring, my last client they referred is a young lady who is looking to have a baby and get pregnant in about 6 months. And she wants to clean house and up level and do it the best way she can. The fun part is, like I was talking about, you know, the things we accept as decline as we age. Mm-hmm. All of the inflammations, like to me, it's a spectrum, and autoimmune is at the end of the spectrum, right? Mm-hmm. That's where your inflammation has gotten to a place where it's really creating a problem.
Right.
And so I have fun in all areas. Obviously, my passion is helping people with autoimmunity, right, you know, take their power back. I had a call right before this with a client who has MS, and we've been working together. And so I have a framework, and the framework always includes, you know, diet. We do, because of the functional medicine piece, you know, I do extensive functional medicine testing with everybody, because what I learned is we all want results as fast as we can get them, right? By the time somebody finds me, like they're really ready to know what's going on. And I used to do, you know, we would add testing later if we weren't getting the results we wanted. And now I'm like, no, let's just know what our targets are and go from there. So diet and nutrition for sure, movement for sure. A lot of people come to me over exercising because they're just determined not to give that up, which is super inflammatory. So, you know, finding that stress management, which would include, and mindset, you know, which includes some kind of, doesn't have to be meditation, but some kind of that work, the mindset, and I know you work with this too. you got to start telling your cells you can heal.
Mm-hmm.
You just do.
Yep.
And so we work on that. And toxins, which is a huge, and again, we're testing. I had one client that came back. I actually thought it was a mistake at the lab because her toxin panel was so clean.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And she happens to also be a friend of mine that I've known for years. And I was like, what is going on? And she laughed. She goes, I have been working on that for 20 years. So I'm glad.
She's like, I would hope so. I know, that's
exactly.
Like, I've been doing this for so long. I would hope I'm pretty freaking clean somewhere along the way.
Well, and it just depends. Like I did a test a few years ago. And again, I already knew, I knew I had molds and mycotoxins, and I knew I had heavy metals, and I did a follow-up test, a couple. Hi, Amy. I saw Amy hopped on.
Oh,
I did a follow-up test, and they had now like had a package where you could do, mycotoxins, metals, and environmental toxins. And so, of course, I'm a data junkie. I'm like, oh yeah, I want that one.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've been avoiding plastic for years, and I've been eating organic for years. And my glyphosate was off the chart, and my BPA was off the chart. And it's like, whoa, okay, more work to do. So I love to kind of see.
Yeah.
But we all need to be doing the things you and I are, instinctively doing anyway, and making conscious choices.
Yeah.
And so what I do with my clients that's different is we have the framework, but it fits their lifestyle. I work with a lot of business owners, sometimes multiple business owners, and these are busy people who you might think have all the excuses in the world why they can't execute their care plan, but they really just need the support. And how does it look for them?
Yeah.
Right? Is it and so really individualizing, and where do we start? And I used to put mindset in there, we'd get to it. Now I'm like, oh, let's start with that and move while we're waiting for the tests, like let's get this going.
Smart.
So we can heal faster.
Right.
But we all need all of it. I have people all the time, they're like, oh, you're an AIP coach. I just want to work on food. And I'm like, just food isn't and really AIP isn't just food. It's a lifestyle that includes all of those pillars.
Right.
So we can't really just fix the one thing.
Yeah. And I mean, it's like, I was always guilty of, we talked about this in the podcast episode, of like chasing the next thing, right? I need to get this test.
I'm doing all the things.
I need to do this test and this IV and this hyperbaric and whatever. And it's like, but then I was still like, nothing's really working. And I have a hard time detoxing. Me
too. I'm a dirty girl. Yep.
Yeah, I have a really hard time because I have massive reactions. And a lot of times reactions that have led to MS flares, bad ones that have ended me up in the hospital. So I have to be really careful. And a lot of doctors don't understand that. Even functional medicine doctors.
Most don't.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. And so I feel like I haven't, I have with the right doctor, but I still feel like, you have to start with the drainage, right? Like my drainage still is not perfect. So then I'm like, but I don't want to cleanse all this other stuff because I can't,
I recycle it.
Sure. Yeah, exactly. So it doesn't make sense. So anyway, but this is super inspiring because there's someone like you who listens.
Have ways.
And you have ways and you listen.
Yeah.
And you can order all the tests, right? You can order everything basically.
Yeah. We actually just opened a second business that's all online testing and supplement access, because I've had so many people that are like, well, I want my daughter to have this test. Or, we've had clinic patients that, well, my sister lives in, Kansas. Can she get the test? And so instead of, needing that direct contact with the doctor, people can just go online and order stuff, which is amazing. Like I couldn't access, once I had learned about that testing, I would go to my PCP, who was amazing, and I would say, I want this test, right? Instead of the one piece of a thyroid panel she did, I want all 5.
Right.
And she's like, great, but then she didn't know what to do with the information because that's not her wheelhouse.
That's not how they're trained.
Yeah, and to credit her, she was like, tell me what you learn. And I'm like, I learned I need to go into functional medicine. That's what I learned.
Yeah.
So, but it's all about what we should all have access to things that can help us and those kinds of tools. And so, that's why we just started Navigate Wellness, was really just as a resource for people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Amen. So, I love that. I love that. So what else would you like to share before we wrap up?
Oh my goodness. Can I share a win that just happened?
Yes, please.
Because, it's easy for me to say, or for, people that aren't familiar with me or may not know me or my story, like, okay, you can kind of get from, getting ready for the handicap placard to now I live on a farm, and that's great. It's a process.
Yeah.
Right? This is me 7 years later. And so the two things, one is a win. So it's gradual. So whatever you're doing to take steps to improve your health, just keep doing it. Mm-hmm. And just continue small step after small step. The client I was meeting with over Zoom before this, who has MS, she's an amazing executor and she's doing good things. It's slow, right? We don't, often we just don't notice. I said, well, how are you doing? And how are your symptoms? And that's kind of part of what I do too. We tend to not notice our wins.
Yep. Oh, I'm so guilty.
We all are. I think that's just like human nature.
Yep.
And so I'm like, oh yeah, that's because I'm here to help you look over your shoulder and say, well, remember when you couldn't X, Y, Z,
Right.
But she happened to have had an appointment with her PCP yesterday, who was asking her questions that got her thinking. And she said to me today, I was taking 600 milligrams of ibuprofen 3 times a day. And which she had never told me before. That's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah. Wait.
But she realized when her doctor, to his credit, has been very concerned about that.
Yeah.
Like, that would have been great for me to know as we're working on healing her gut.
Right.
But she realized yesterday when he said, what's going on with, how are you doing with the ibuprofen? She was like, I don't even remember the last time I used it.
Wow, Julie.
And so, but she hadn't connected those dots either.
Right.
So, and that's great. That snuck up on her. Now she's like, wow, what?
It's working.
Yeah, it's working. So, it takes time. It took a long time for most of us to get sick. Yeah. It takes time to get well. And then I'll add because it still blows me away. I think I'm fully well. I feel great. And I know 6 months from now I'm going to feel even better, because that's how it's been over the past 7 years. And it's like, it's truly amazing. Like, the body is miraculous.
It is miraculous. It is. She is my little body here. Yes, she is. Yes. She's my partner in crime, right? Like, we have to be grateful for them, because yes, we've all been through a lot. I mean, I'm still healing. I'm not, I believe my mindset is totally there, but my physicality isn't where I'd like it to be yet. Where you've gotten to that point. I still, after 19 years now of MS, I don't feel like I'm there yet, but I'm never going to stop striving to be where I want to be, and know that I can do that. So yeah.
And that's that. You said something on our podcast interview, which I'm sure you say a lot, but for me, I was like, yes, acceptance in warrior mode. Right. And so that's what that is, right? It's not like acceptance as like, I accepted my diagnosis and, you're going to decline. No, that's not what it is. It's like, okay.
Yeah. As the champion.
as that champion, or champion mode, not warrior
No,
mode.
it's okay.
I just made that one up. Threw that in there.
But because
But
a lot
it's
of people
but
call themselves
that
MS warriors or autoimmune
that's where
warriors,
I know.
and there's
But
nothing wrong with that. But I like to think of it as a champion because it's not quite as
aggressive. Well,
yes.
and I think that is on us to be our own champion as we just step by step on our healing journey. And that's what you just said it reminded me of your acceptance in champion mode, because you're like, you're not in denial.
Yeah.
And you know what your target is.
Right.
Right. And it's like, I will get there. I have a little bit to go.
Yeah.
Not there yet.
Yeah.
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 And life happens and things are always changing. And so I've been symptom free, but it doesn't mean I'm done addressing challenges.
Right. And a lot of people would be like, oh, I'm done. I'm cured. I'm healed. But no, it's like a lifelong journey. And
totally.
Yeah. And we have to keep going. I mean, it's like we can't stop because we have been given this, and it's a gift in a lot of ways because we can see things from a different perspective. Really.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Wow. So,
Julie, this has been, I want to make sure I got everything on my list. I had a lot. Oh, here we go. We have like 2 minutes. Top 3 tips for people with autoimmune.
Oh my goodness. Okay. If you haven't already, you got to give up the gluten, and really give up the gluten, not just kind of, sort of, mostly. Yeah. That is number one. You will not be able to heal that autoimmune cycle if you're still dabbling in gluten.
Yeah.
And that is very unpopular. People don't want to hear that. It's true. Right. Let's see. 2 other tips. Easier said than done, and I know we talked about this listen to your body. Yes. It is giving you information, even if it's not what you want to hear. Listen to your body. And also, easier said than done, give yourself grace. Because
so true.
That's usually, I joke, that is another big piece of my job, is reminding my clients to give themselves grace, because we often don't think to do that.
Yes. I tell my students to focus on going easy on themselves. Yeah. Instead of being hard on themselves. Yeah. Because I feel like a lot of people with autoimmune are known for being perfectionists, being hard on themselves. So the focus is go easy. Easy.
I always say, treat yourself like you would treat a friend, which is usually so far how from most of us would treat ourselves. Right. So just give yourself grace.
Oh, I love that.
And they go together. If your body's saying not today, well, then give yourself grace that you'll get whatever it is done tomorrow. Yes.
We speak the same language, Julie.
We do.
We really do. And you've been such a blessing. I mean, I don't even know you that well, but I feel like I've known you forever. And I feel like we're on the same wavelength, and you're just such an inspiration. So thank you for taking the time to be here today.
Thank you for having me. We're going to have to we'll make another reason to have another conversation soon.
We will.
And then we need to get you back to Colorado on a horse again in a more comfortable saddle for a shorter period of time.
I'm there. I am there.
But not one of mine, because they're lunatics. But we'll find you a good one.
I'm there. Sign me up. You got me. I'm on it. I love Colorado. I went to college there. My husband, we both have a affinity for Colorado. We're a special place for us. So yeah.
Well, before you know it, summer will be here.
So. I know. Well, we'll be back. maybe winter, actually. Okay, I better get this saved before we get kicked off.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. And someone wrote, thank you for sharing your experiences and wisdom. Julie, you are the best.
Thank you, Karen.
For sharing with us. You wouldn't.
Thanks.
And your podcast, everybody check out Julie's podcast, Inspired Living with Autoimmunity. It's awesome. It's the best. Great.
Check out Megan's episode. It's fantastic now that we got that glitch fixed.
Thank you. Okay. Okay.
Bye.